I've told you before about the Chinese government's high security virus research lab in Wuhan. Of all the cities in China, and there are very many, what are the odds that a virus outbreak just happens to be in the same city as their virus research lab? That's a heck of a coincidence. But coincidences do happen. It's just a bit hard to believe in chance or coincidence when you're dealing with a communist dictatorship. Communist dictatorships lie and cover up to protect their reputation all the time. The Chernobyl explosion and cover-up is the classic case of this. It's essential that dictatorships never admit failure or defeat, because that could empower critics or dissidents. The whole point of a strong man is that he's strong, he's infallible. So China has that dictatorship culture, and add on to that the Chinese cultural tradition of saving face. And then add to that how devastating this failure has been to the Chinese people, how many it has killed, surely far beyond what they have publicly admitted to. If it ever got out that this virus was actually caused by the Chinese government, well, let me quote Mikhail Gorbachev, the last dictator of the Soviet Union. This is from a speech he gave in 2006. The nuclear meltdown at Chernobyl 20 years ago this month, even more than my launch of perestroika, was perhaps the main cause of the Soviet Union's collapse 5 years later. Indeed, the Chernobyl catastrophe was a historic turning point. There was the era before the disaster, and there is the very different era that has followed, unquote. Not just the massive cost of Chernobyl, but the fact that the dictatorship was to blame for the accident and for what came later that wasn't accidental, the cover-up, the denial. And so you see, it is likely that we will never know the full truth about the Wuhan virus until after the Communist Party of China falls, like the Communist Party of the Soviet Union fell. We know the Wuhan virus lab is involved in intrigues, and bizarrely, Canada is a part of that. As I've shown you before, Justin Trudeau approved the transfer of the Ebola virus from Canada's virus lab to the Wuhan facility. Why on earth did Trudeau do that? And this case of a Chinese national working in Canada's top security virus lab being frog-marched out of the lab by police. The story says she went back and forth to China, the clear implication being that she was a spy. Now, the obvious point is doctors don't spy on doctors. Researchers working on public health don't spy on each other. If she were spying something so serious that she was marched out of there by cops, then she really wasn't working on public interest, public health stuff, was she? She was taking it for other purposes, obviously, illegal purposes, obviously, if the police were involved. I don't know what the facts are. The RCMP has never said what. But biological warfare is an obvious possibility. Not a lot of countries do that sort of thing. Russia, China, probably America. That's about it. So that's the background on the Wuhan virus lab. There's actually a couple of labs in town, but that's all just circumstantial evidence, right? The more traditional explanation was that the virus leaped from animals to people at Wuhan's wet market, which is a way of describing markets where live animals, particularly wild animals, are sold for food in the heart of the city. Years ago, I went to the wet market in Shanghai, China, and it was a shocking experience for someone used to Canadian norms of hygiene and food preparation and shopping. The air was thick with the dander and dung and breath of every imaginable creature, some dead, some alive, some being killed right there, all destined to be eaten in whatever manner, some right there at the store. I remember I could barely breathe as I walked through the market, and I tried to hold my breath just till I was out of it. It was so gross to me. So yeah, if they were harvesting and selling and eating bats, including bat soup, it's very believable, at least to a layman like me, that the virus came that way. Absolutely. Again, I have no idea what actually happened, but it sounds plausible. The Chinese government certainly suggested that, and in a big show, they shut down that wet market in Wuhan. But I note that they have since reopened wet markets across China, so there's that. That's odd. Then again, did you know that there were 4 nuclear reactors at Chernobyl? One of them exploded, but the Soviets continued operating the other 3 reactors the whole time. Can you believe it? One exploded. It was a nuclear meltdown, but they never turned off the other 3. They just needed the power too badly, and they really didn't care. It's sort of similar, isn't it? In some ways, it doesn't matter where the Chinese virus came from. It came from somewhere. Now, what do we do about it? Let's focus on that. Like with Chernobyl, it exploded because of a design flaw and because the staff that night who were operating it didn't know what they were doing during an emergency test, and they broke their own rules, etc. Whoever was to blame was secondary. The fire had to be put out. The radiation had to be stopped. Recriminations could come later. Same here. The virus is here. Now what? Let's fix that. Well, that's where we know for a fact we can blame the Chinese communists. Here's the English language translation of a story published by the communist propaganda outlet called Xinhua, showing that Wuhan police actually rounded up and arrested 8 doctors, medical doctors, who were trying to solve the problem, fight the virus, raise alarm about it. For weeks, police threatened anyone who even talked about it. They destroyed samples of the virus. They kept it secret from the world for weeks. So we know that the cover-up made things worse. It showed malice, of course, but more than that, practically, it kept people of good faith, including foreign countries, from protecting themselves. So that's the state of what we know for sure. And that's the state of what I personally knew until yesterday when I saw this clip from Tucker Carlson on Fox News.
Here's what the paper says. First, the scientists confirm what scientists around the world have said they believe. The virus most likely came from an animal known as the intermediate horseshoe bat. Here's the striking thing. There are no known colonies of this bat within 900 kilometers of Wuhan, nor is there any evidence that they were sold in the Wuhan wet market, despite many claims in the American media to the contrary, including on this show, by the way. Last night we did a segment on wet markets, the one in Wuhan included, and suggested that this bat was sold there. But let's be clear, the only actual analysis of that question that we're aware of is in this paper. These scientists interviewed almost 60 people, 59 of them, who frequented the Wuhan wet market. They confirmed there were no horseshoe bats for sale there, period.
Really? Wow. So the bat in question that had the virus wasn't a bat found in Wuhan's wet market. It didn't come from the Wuhan wet market because it couldn't come from the Wuhan wet market. That's quite a story. He cited a research paper published by a Chinese government university. It's very interesting, but there's so much disinformation out there. I was careful. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. This Wuhan virus story is so insane as it is. There is no need for fiction. We're living the most bizarre science fiction horror story right now. No need to make it worse. But I was curious. I wanted to see this study for myself and maybe put it through like a Google Translate from Chinese to English. But I found it in English. Here, it's a report. It's just a couple of pages long, actually, published by 2 Chinese researchers, Bo Tao Xiao and Lei Xiao. The possible origins of the 2019 novel coronavirus. That's what this study is called. And this document I'm looking at here is a PDF. It's saved from a website called ResearchGate, which is a huge website with scholarly publications from around the world. You can see that Bo Tao Xiao has published 26 papers and has been cited 265 times. So he's a real scholar. And as you can see at the very bottom of the page, the footer on this PDF says, all content following this page was uploaded by Bo Tao Xiao on the 6th of February, 2020. So that was about a week after Trump restricted flights from China to America, but before the rest of the world had really woken up to the threat. By the way, here's Bo Tao Xiao's homepage on the South China University of Technology website. So he's a real guy. He seems like a very smart guy. You can see he has 2 degrees from Chongqing University, but then he got his PhD at Northwestern University, which is an outstanding university in Chicago, one of the leading American universities. But like I say, the document I got was just a PDF. That is, someone saved it. But when I clicked the website link at the very top, the paper wasn't there. So I was skeptical. I thought, well, was the paper ever there? Is this some sort of forgery or hoax? Is this disinformation? And I got nervous because if I couldn't find this paper on the actual ResearchGate site, maybe it wasn't real. But maybe whoever deleted it from ResearchGate forgot to delete it from archives.org. That is a website I use occasionally for research. It's also called the Wayback Machine. It's sort of neat. It's a website that literally takes little snapshots of the entire internet, page by page every few days and just keeps it an archive. It's like a backup of the whole internet. I went to a snapshot of that very ResearchGate page back in February, and indeed the study was there. It was archived. I guess what I'm saying is it's real. And it was deleted by someone since then for some reason, but it was real, it was there. I'm going to take you through the study in a moment. It's only a couple of pages. It's in English. It's pretty easy to understand. But first I want to show you a propaganda video that I discovered on the internet today while poking around on this subject. I found it on a Chinese language website, .cn, so it's actually a Chinese website itself, sort of like a YouTube page. It's an official Chinese propaganda video, very well done, very exciting, beautifully produced, and obviously published before the pandemic. And it's about a brave young virus researcher from Wuhan's virus labs who goes out into caves all around China and collects bats, including bat blood and bat urine, and just as important, little ticks and other bugs that live on bats that can spread the virus from bats to other things, including people. Remember, this video was produced before the pandemic. The video was designed to show how awesome China's virus program was, and this young man was a hero. There's a moment in this video, you'll see it in a second, where they brag about how many viruses China has discovered. China has discovered approximately as many viruses as the entire rest of the world has combined. They're obsessed with viruses in Wuhan. I'm going to play for you now an excerpt from my noon live stream that I recorded today. I don't know if you know, but every day at 12 noon Eastern time, I do a 1-hour live show where I take questions from the audience too. And I usually just look at videos and talk off the cuff. And I had only discovered this video right before I went on the show today, so I went through it for the first time on the air with my viewers. I'll show you that because I don't think I can do a much better job the second time through. So watch me as we go through the short propaganda video about this Wuhan virus lab and how they harvest bat viruses on purpose. So bravely and in great danger, I believe that. So this is me earlier today, just riffing. Okay, watch the clip and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Take a look. So this is obviously, can they hear my voice over top? Yeah. So this is obviously a professionally produced documentary. Obviously it's government propaganda. You saw the name of the agency, China Science Communication. Youth in the Wild. That's a cave, obviously. Did you see the bat there? When we are confronted with an invisible enemy, we can find threats hidden deeper. Only when we hide ourselves. It sounds like a haiku. Youth in the Wild, the invisible defender. So this is calling these virus scientists invisible defenders. So he's got his protective gear. I am not a doctor, but I work to cure and save people. Really, do you, mate?
我们是战士，却守护着一条看不见的国防线。
至于它里面的结果是生理正中间这里，按这个来说应该是成。
我是田俊华，从事病毒样本采集。
I work in virus sample collection and classification.
边防线的守卫者。
Those are some ominous images.
病毒就是人类生命的杀手。
Viruses have been the leading cause of human death. They have been highly elusive and caught people off guard.
病毒肉眼不可见，
Invisible to the naked
可
eye.
以通过变媒生物
Infect people through vectors.
而变媒生物在进化过程中
Over the course of evolution, vectors have coexisted with the
可能形
viruses.
成了抑制病
A
毒的
vector
物质
is
我们只有
the host
通
of
过
the
变媒
virus, I
生物
think.
才能为制作疫苗奠定重要的基础。而这
This
是
is
我
our
们肩负的
mission.
使命。
Wuhan Centers for Disease Prevention and Control. There you go. Did you see that? That's their top. Okay, keep rolling. That's their top virus lab in the whole country. Just happens to be in Wuhan. So this guy's out there catching creepy crawlies.
潜伏、观察。山野是我的办公室。
It's a very pretty background. This is very professionally done. The caves are my workbench. Oh, can you go back 10 seconds? What did he say there about the caves? Mountains and plains service my office. Is that so pretty? Yeah, keep going. The caves are my workbench. One female and one male. We are so lucky. So he's catching bats. He's going into caves and catching bats. Hubei province. It's a treasure trove for vectors. This tick can kill people. We caught one now.
但一部分并美生物生活的环境，对人类来说非常恶劣，
Harsh for
是一个极
humankind.
大考验。
This is a hell of a video. This is not some amateur production. Among all known creatures, the bats are rich in various viruses
可以
inside.
找到绝大多数
You can find most viruses responsible for human diseases,
狂犬病毒，
like rabies virus, SARS, and Ebola.
就是蝙蝠栖息的
Accordingly, the
空气
caves frequented by bats become our main battlefields. He's going into the cave of bats.
潮湿、
Wet,
黑暗、
dark,
孤独，
and lonely. Yeah, that's
蝙
right.
蝠的生活环境，
Bats usually lives in caves humans can hardly reach.
但只有这样的环境，
Only in these places can we find the most ideal virus vector samples. Watch out! Most bats living here are horseshoe bats. Oh, can you go back for 1 second? See, the horseshoe bats, that's such an important point. And horseshoe bats. Yeah, oh, and Pipistrellus abramus. I'm going to Google that for a second. Pipistrellus abramus. That's also called a Japanese house bat. Okay, I just Googled that. Remember that word horseshoe bat, okay? I'm going to come back to that later. I'll just tell you why now. Horseshoe bats are not for sale in the Wuhan wet market, and I'll give you my proof point for that later. So horseshoe bats and Pipistrellus abramus, that's also called a Japanese bat. Keep going. If we keep our skin bare, we can easily get contact with the feces of bats, which contaminate everything. So it's highly risky here. It usually takes several days living in the bats' caves to analyze the symbiotic relations between bat populations and viruses. No cell phone signals,
没有补给，
no supplies.
是真的害怕，
I can feel the fear,
怕感染，
fear of infections,
怕迷路，
fear of getting lost.
因为害怕，
With this fear,
所以我每一步
I take every
都
step
很小心
extremely cautiously.
越是害怕，
The more I feel the fear,
就把每一个细
the
节
more I
做
take cautions in doing the details.
因为你发现病毒
Because when you find the viruses,
也是最容易被病毒
you're also
感染的
most
过程
easily exposed to the viruses.
这是一场没有
This is
硝
a
烟
true
的
battle
战争
only without the smoke of gunpowder. Look at those bats, look at those teeth. You got to spread the net open just like this.
一定要把这个洞封死。
Make sure the cave is fully sealed.
出来一个，
There's one bat. The only mammals can fly.
要不然它会往抓破了。
Make sure it will not rip the net open. Let's do the sample collection, then analyze the viruses they take.
好，发现一个皮虫，
Okay, we've got a tick
长
here.
腹硬皮，非常特殊的
Oh,
硬皮。
go back for a second. Go back. They named the tick. Ixodes vespertilionis. I'm just going to Google that. Ixodes vespertilionis. That's just a tick. That's just a tick. It's a bat tick. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to, I didn't know what that word was. That's, keep going, very special type of tick. You cannot find it anywhere else.
收获非常大。
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
这是一条未知的
It's a
路，
road never traveled.
就像蝙蝠生
Just
存
like the
的洞
caves
穴，
frequented by the
深不
bats.
见底。
It's so deep. When you look long into an abyss, the abyss looks into you. That's what, was that what Freud, if anything, looks into you too. There's something other people can never do for you. Once I find myself in this situation, I've learned to examine myself. That's his son. And overcome my fears. I need the support of my family. I got used to this. It's kind of interesting. The road is bumpy, but we must learn to stick to our initial choice when we feel confused and lost. Yeah, I'd holler like that if I got out of that cave of doom. In the past 10 plus years, we have visited every corner of Hubei province. We explored dozens of undeveloped caves. Lucilia sericata. Lucilia, I'm guessing Lucilia is from the Latin for light. I'm guessing it's a firefly. Sericata, let's see. Common green bottlefly. Okay, I should stop pretending that I know Latin. Keep going. 300 types of virus vectors. But I do hope these virus preserved for, oh, go back. I was looking at the names instead of reading the words. But I do hope these virus samples will only be preserved for scientific research. Keep going. And will never be used in real life. Well, you know what? That's what we call foreshadowing, people. That's what we call foreshadowing. That's a dramatic moment. I hope these viruses will never be used in real life. Keep going. Because humans need not only the vaccines, but also the protection from the nature. Pause. Nearly 2,000 types of viruses have been discovered by Chinese CDC authorities over the last 12 years. Only 2,284 types of viruses had been discovered worldwide over the 200 years prior to China's discovery. They're very proud. They're a virus superpower. Keep going. China has taken the lead in the world in the field of basic research of virus. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? In light of what has since happened in Wuhan. Now, let me read to you from the study done by the two Chinese professors. Let's take a look. This is going to blow your mind, especially since you saw that propaganda video. Again, it's called The Possible Origins of the 2019 Novel Coronavirus by Botao Xiao and Lei Xiao. And you can see their names have those tiny little footnotes, and those footnotes describe their credentials. Here are their credentials. Joint International Research Laboratory of Synthetic Biology and Medicine, School of Biology and Biological Engineering, South China University of Technology in Guangzhou, China. School of Physics, Huazhong University of Science and Technology, Wuhan, China. And Tianyou Hospital, Wuhan University of Science and Technology, Wuhan, China. So these are Chinese professors, universities, University Hospital in Wuhan. I'm going to read pretty much all of this study because it matters. It's not that long, so bear with me. The 2019 coronavirus has caused an epidemic of 28,000 laboratory confirmed infections in humans, including 564 deaths in China by February 6th, 2020. So you can see the numbers are far worse in the 2 months since. I'm reading this verbatim. The English wasn't perfect, but it's pretty good. Two descriptions of the virus published on Nature this week indicated that the genome sequences patients were 96% or 89% identical to the bat coronavirus ZC45, originally found in Rhinolophus affinis. That's the name of a bat. It was critical to study where the pathogen came from and how it passed on to human. Okay, so bats. How did it get into people? That's what's important to study, they're saying. Well, as we know, it was linked to the wet market. An article published on The Lancet, that's a British journal, reported that 41 people in Wuhan were found to have the acute respiratory syndrome, and 27 of them had contact with Huanan seafood market. The 2019 coronavirus was found in 33 out of 585 samples collected in the market after the outbreak. The market was suspicious to be the origin of the epidemic and was shut down according to the rule of quarantine, the source during an epidemic. The bats carrying coronavirus ZC45 were originally found in Yunnan or Zhejiang province, both of which were more than 900 kilometers away from the seafood market. Bats were normally found to live in caves and trees, but the seafood market is in a densely populated district of Wuhan, a metropolitan of 15 million people. The probability was very low for the bats to fly to the market. According to municipal reports and the testimonies of 31 residents and 28 visitors, the bat was never a food source in the city, and no bat was traded in the market. There was possible natural recombination or intermediate host of the coronavirus, yet little proof has been reported. Okay, so stop for a moment. You notice it's called a seafood market. They talked to 59 people there. No one had ever seen a bat being sold there. 59 people they talked to. How did the particular bat in question get there from 900 kilometers away in Yunnan or Zhejiang into the center of a big city, Wuhan, twice the size of Manhattan? They obviously didn't fly there. Was there any possible other way? Was there any other possible pathway? We screened the area around the seafood market and identified 2 laboratories conducting research on bat coronavirus. Within 280 meters of the market, there was the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Figure 1 from Google Maps. And look at Figure 1. The Chinese government put their ultra-high security virus research lab, the one that Trudeau sent the Ebola virus to, the one that was collecting all those blood and urine samples. These viruses, there's 2 of them in Wuhan. One's right in the middle of the city, next to restaurants, next to hospitals, just a 5-minute walk to the seafood market, the wet market. Look at that map. This is the map from the study. WHCDC, that's the Wuhan Center for Disease Control, hosted animals in laboratories for research purpose, one of which was specialized in pathogens collection and identification. In one of the studies, 155 bats, including Rhinolophus affinis, that's a kind of bat, were captured in Hubei province, and other 450 bats were captured in Zhejiang province. The expert in collection was noted in the author contributions. Moreover, he was broadcasted for collecting viruses on nationwide newspapers and websites in 2007 and 2019. That's the hero of the propaganda movie. He described that he was once attacked by bats, and the blood of a bat shot on his skin. He knew the extreme danger of the infection, so he quarantined himself for 14 days. In another accident, he quarantined himself again because bats peed on him. He was once thrilled for capturing a bat carrying a live tick. They're talking about that guy in that propaganda movie. They're talking about him, that guy. Surgery was performed on the caged animals, and the tissue samples were collected for DNA and RNA extraction and sequencing. The tissue samples and contaminated trashes were source of pathogens. They were only 280 meters from the seafood market. The Wuhan Center for Disease Control was also adjacent to the Union Hospital, Figure 1, where the first group of doctors were infected during this epidemic. It is plausible that the virus leaked around and some of them contaminated the initial patients in this epidemic, though solid proofs are needed in future study. Yeah. Do you think that further study will happen? Sure. Just after the Communist Party's gone, just like in Chernobyl. Now, I've almost read this entire study to you, so I might as well read every last word. The second laboratory was 12 kilometers from the seafood market and belonged to Wuhan Institute of Virology, Chinese Academy of Sciences. This laboratory reported that the Chinese horseshoe bats were natural reservoirs for the severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, which caused the 2002-2003 pandemic. The principal investigator participated in a project which generated a chimeric virus using the SARS coronavirus reverse genetic system and reported the potential for human. In summary, somebody was entangled with the evolution of 2019 coronavirus. In addition to origins of natural recombination and intermediate host, the killer coronavirus probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan. Safety level may need to be reinforced in high-risk biohazardous laboratories. Regulations may be taken to relocate these laboratories far away from city center and other densely populated places. Yeah, you think? Let me read just one more note on the study again. That's the end of the study, but these two professors were legit. I want to show you. They were from Wuhan. They were serious scholars trained in both China and America, at Northwestern, for heaven's sakes, a top school. And look at this. This was published on ResearchGate by scholars who had published dozens of times before, been cited hundreds of times before, and look at this, acknowledgments. This work is supported by the National Natural Science Foundation of China. The study was paid for by the Chinese government, but now it's poof, it's gone. Is it a conclusive study? No, it is not. As the authors of it say, this needs more study. But as to that seafood market, they literally interviewed 59 people in the market, and none of them had seen any bats there. These guys call it a seafood market. So maybe it didn't come from the market. Let me read that one line again. According to municipal reports and the testimonies of 31 residents and 28 visitors, the bat was never a food source in the city, and no bat was traded in the market. Is that true? It's a Chinese government paper. If you interview 59 people and none of them say that bats were in the market, maybe, just maybe, it's worth looking at the 2 virus labs in town, including where a guy says he was peed on and bled on by a bat that's just 280 meters away. Yeah, just maybe. Look, in some ways it doesn't matter. Just like what caused Chernobyl didn't matter. What mattered was how to fix it. But really, if you don't want Chernobyl to happen again, you need to know. Chernobyl was an engineering flaw, and it was a training flaw, and it was an operational flaw, but mainly it was a flaw of the Communist Party that hid all those things. Wuhan is a biological problem, it is a technical problem, it is a globalism problem, it's a public health problem, but it's also a Communist Party of China problem. Don't you think? That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.